Greetings and welcome to Student Exposure, where we highlight student-produced projects created by participants in DCTV's training program. I'm your host, Trinice Bishop. Thanks so much for joining us. In today's episode of Student Exposure, we'll concentrate on how recent development in DC has affected various communities. Today, we'll take a look at how a co-op helps DC residents with affordable housing. We'll explore the transformation of the H Street corridor, and in our last segment, we'll see how the 11th Street Bridge Park project is changing both sides of the Anacostia River. This is Student Exposure, Development in DC. From our studios in the historic Brooks Mansion, located in Northeast Washington, DC, this is Student Exposure. Welcome to Student Exposure, Development in DC. Thanks so much again for joining us. In our first segment, we'll explore a limited equity co-op through the eyes of its founder, community activist Linda Leaks. We'll see how a co-op functions and learn how low-income DC residents can avoid some of the pitfalls created by developers that are raising the cost of housing.
My name is Linda Leaks, and I was the, let's say, instigator. I was the first person to start organizing to create the Ella Jo Baker Intentional Community. I started organizing and trying to find people to create an intentional community, that was sort of like what was happening in the 90s. There were people all over the place creating, especially in Silver Spring and Tacoma Park, creating intentional communities. The Ella Jo Baker Intentional Cooperative, Community Cooperative was started when there was a huge effort of people are in this area, actually, Silver Spring, Tacoma Park, creating intentional communities and cooperatives. And I was excited about the idea because I had always been excited about cooperatives and intentional community. So I was inspired to move forward, to talk with folks and try to pull people in to be a part of this intentional community. And it took me, I would say, about 8 to 9 years to really pull together a force of people who were as committed or as interested in creating a intentional community. The intentional part is for community activists, social justice activists, people who are out there doing a lot of work to make sure that we have a just society, but did not have a whole lot of money to pay the big cost for housing. And that was the idea and the concept behind creating the Ella Jo Baker Intentional Community Cooperative. The intent initially was to create a community for people who were involved in social justice activity, people who are struggling in the community to make life better for everybody. Oftentimes, when there are folks who are organizers, community justice organizers, which I have been all of my life, for most of my life, I've been out there. And I know that it is hard to fight for justice and have a job that will pay enough money to pay for the housing or to pay your other kind of expense. So for me, the intention of the cooperative was to create a space for social justice organizers or activists. That's what the intentional part of the intentional community is all about. In a cooperative, everybody who lives in the cooperative is a member and they have a right to make decisions about how the cooperative is taken care of. In a condominium, a person will purchase a unit outright. Cooperative, for the most part, developers do not make a whole lot of money. That's why when you have a cooperative develop, usually developers who develop cooperatives, they have social justice in their motivation. There are different types of housing cooperative. There are what is called market rate cooperatives. There's what's called limited equity cooperatives. And the difference between market rate and limited equity is the amount of money that is paid into becoming a member of the cooperative. Cooperatives, I think, on all levels are a quality idea. It's a great idea because it involves people coming together, working together for a cause to benefit everybody.
And now here in studio with me today is student producer Lee Mosley. Lee, welcome to Student Exposure. Thanks so much for being with us. We were talking just a little bit and I was telling Lee while we were watching the video that I want to be like Lee when I grow up because she is fantastic. So Lee, tell me, why do you think it was important, or why did Linda Leaks want to spearhead the Ella Jo Baker Intentional Community Cooperative?
Well, first of all, it's because of who it was named after. Ella Jo Baker was a very serious civil rights leader that doesn't get the credit and didn't want the credit for a lot of the work that she did during the civil rights movement. She started out working with the NAACP that she spent an entire lifetime working with. Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee with Stokely Carmichael and Bernice Johnson Reagan and other people who were very active in the civil rights movement. And she wanted, Ella Jo Baker was the kind of person who thought that the basis for the movement should come from the ground up, not from the top down. Mm-hmm. And that is basically what Linda Leaks has tried to do during her lifetime of commitment. She has formed like 15 different cooperatives in this city, and she's been a very ardent and hard-working community organizer and social justice activist.
So this is definitely a project that's kind of close to your heart because you are a member of this cooperative, correct?
Yes, I am.
And tell me, what were your reasons for wanting to join this particular cooperative?
I like the ideas on which it was based. First of all, it's based on the 7 Kwanzaa principles that have to do with cooperative living, and in terms of economics and just the whole way of thinking and moving about in the world, where you're taking interest in your neighbor and what happens to other people where you live and outside of your own narrow community as well.
Fantastic, fantastic. And so again, what was the intended mission of the cooperative? Like, are there new goals that they're working on, or are they still kind of focused on the same principles that they were founded on?
We're still working on the same basic principles because that's a never-ending job. However, we do have other projects that we work on, and I think that our mission has been accomplished, basically to create an environment where people who are working every day very hard to improve the quality and the quality of the life of people that live in our immediate community as well as outside of that, and have an affordable way to live. Because if you work for a lot of community organizations, the pay is usually very low, and you do a lot of hard work. And we have people who are parents; they have to raise children,
right.
And the funds they have to pay for where they live is relatively low, particularly since we are located in Adams Morgan. And we need to continue to do the work and have a place to live as well.
All right. Well, it was a pleasure to meet you, Lee. Thank you so much for your wonderful project. You and your comrades in your group did a fantastic job, and thanks for the information as well. The Ella Jo Baker Cooperative is a model and a valuable institution for alternative, affordable housing for low to moderate income social activists in the District of Columbia. For more information, visit the Ella Jo Baker Intentional Community Cooperative on Facebook. Next on Student Exposure, we'll take a look at what's really happening with the business and residential transformation on H Street. We'll be back.
Taking care of a family member can lead to plenty of questions. Fortunately, there's a place to get the answers, for them and for you. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place. The Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
With the resurrection of the streetcar in the H Street corridor, DC residents and patrons now have renewed interest in the area. H Street is now positioned as an exciting destination for entertainment and new residents. The colliding worlds of the old H Street and new H Street come together in this Student Exposure segment with fascinating interviews detailing different experiences in this neighborhood.
My name is Jeremiah Cohen. I've been in this neighborhood for about almost 2 years. I run and own Bullfrog Bagels. It's probably like the only bagel shop within a couple miles of here. I'm going to say that for this neighborhood, I'm pro-density. I'm pro-height for this neighborhood. Why? Because it's not going back in time. There is no green space. It might as well go the full Monty of up and create the density and create even more business in these shops and restaurants and bars. Frankly, there are a lot of places on this street and not enough customers. So the only thing that's going to fix that is more people, more density.
I'm actually the chairman of the Economic Development and Zoning Committee for ANC 6A, which reviews zoning and historic changes to the area. There have been a lot of changes. When we first moved in, there weren't as many bars and restaurants. There have been a lot more that have been coming in. The big change over the last 5 years, though, that we've seen is really more density coming in, more apartment buildings that are being developed. You have the Maryland that just came in on the corner. That was a huge change. That kind of changed the look of the neighborhood quite a bit. Now you're seeing a lot more apartments coming far down, both on Benning Road and farther down on H Street. So that's the big change. The ones that have been here the longest are the ones that are going to be pushed out. The biggest example is they're in the alley behind our house. There are two auto body shops that have been around for, I want to say like 50 years. They've just been here forever. One of them is already sold for a new development. It's going to become, I believe, 4 apartment units and a loft apartment and retail. And there's another auto body shop that's right behind our house that's also similarly everyone kind of speculates eventually it's going to go be purchased and redeveloped, and the owners even said that he would probably sell it as soon as someone made him a good offer. What's the future look like for this area? We love this neighborhood. We've loved it since we moved in. It's interesting. A friend of mine has lived on 14th Place for 25 years, and I always used to come over here and visit and think, this place is awful. It's scary. I don't want to live here. I'd never want to live here. And when we were looking to buy, my wife actually suggested, this neighborhood, and I thought she was crazy. And then we started to look around. It's like, wow, actually, it's nice. It's much nicer than I remember. And it's really developed a lot since then. And I think the future is kind of murky because you're getting huge changes coming in. The density is going to change a lot. You're getting a lot of different types of people moving in. And there's a huge gentrifying aspect of that, and a dynamic where you get the older residents who don't really appreciate the development that's coming in, and the new folks coming in, and a lot of people that view this area not as an old residential neighborhood, which is what the people that live here used to think about it, but see it as an entertainment district. And so that's really been an interesting dynamic. I think that's going to continue going forward, but it's a fun place to live, and it's a great community, and we have a lot of friends, and it's just a really nice community.
And joining me now to discuss this segment is DCTV student producer Sage Salvo. Sage, welcome to Student Exposure.
Thank you for
We
having
were
me.
just talking kind of like in the middle of the little break, and there are tons of changes going on in and around the DC area. I remember when I was little, it used to be known as Chocolate City, right? And that's kind of changing just a tad, or maybe the chocolate has been placed around different quarters of the city. So H Street, booming. Streetcars there, it's attracting new people, tourists even. Why did you pick this particular neighborhood to kind of focus on how this may be, or how this neighborhood may be also resembling other changes citywide?
Yeah, A Street represents sort of what's going on in DC as a whole, because there's so much intense development going on there. The businesses have come in so quickly, and residents have been moved out or displaced at such a rate that we felt like it was really a good hotspot for taking the temperature around what's going on in DC as a whole.
And so, in particular, I think that the H Street corridor is getting much younger as well, getting a little bit more diverse in terms of age, religion, ethnic background. And so, people go there to kind of, for what, entertainment, and I mean, what else is new in H Street that we don't know about besides the streetcar?
The condos, and you heard our guest speak about density. And that's the buildings are getting taller. They're attracting more millennials. These are younger folks with smaller families who can afford to live in smaller spaces because they don't have as many kids. And so you're seeing the area become much more dense, and it's growing taller. And that's the new businesses. Those are the condos, the apartments. And it's really designed to attract a certain kind of new resident that can live in a dense environment. So you're seeing the demographics skew down in age. You're seeing income go up. And you're certainly seeing the displacement of the traditional residents who are largely African American with more of a diverse base.
Absolutely. So with H Street, can you think of any other neighborhoods in particular that might be kind of like Bloomingdale? It's kind of doing the same kind of boom in terms of being more diverse, but not necessarily growing up.
Yeah.
Can you think of any other places in the city
U
where you think
Street
this
is another interesting one as well.
Okay.
Yeah, U Street is a bit of a different mix because they've tagged some of the historic places like the Howard Theater. But once you go down the corridor, you see the new restaurants popping up.
Yes.
You see the new apartments popping up. So U Street's another area that I think mirrors A Street a little bit.
Absolutely. As a Howard University grad, I know that 7th Street corridor
Absolutely.
and the H Street corridor. Lots of things are certainly changing. What is the new neighborhood in the Shaw neighborhood even?
Shaw
changing
district.
a whole lot.
And they've tabbed that under one of the programs called Great Streets. So that corridor has been tabbed for specific development, innovation development. There's a new innovation hub that's going to be connected with Howard University called the Luma Labs, right off of 7th Street, like you just said.
You're right. You're absolutely right. So what did you gain? What did you learn about this process and going through, learning through more about H Street in particular, and how were you able to incorporate your new information in the piece?
So it's interesting. My main takeaway from this piece was that the H Street corridor in particular and the streetcar represents what I think is going to be a symbol of class distinction. You're going to have your tourists, you're going to have your new residents. They're going to utilize that particular streetcar. Right now it's very limited.
Right.
It takes you from about Union Station over to
And
Benning.
it's kind of costly.
It's going to be very costly, and I think these are going to be on purpose because your traditional residents mostly still going to be on foot or on the bus because the bus still runs down that corridor.
Right.
So I think you see a line being drawn in terms of who's going to be using that streetcar and who's not.
Okay, well, so we'll have to keep our eyes out to see how and if things change in the H Street corridor. Thanks again
Absolutely.
for joining me, Sage.
Thank you.
H Street has transformed from an historic black neighborhood devastated by the riots of the 1960s to a new entertainment destination for the 21st century. With the streetcar now providing more opportunity for both locals and tourists to travel the corridor, the future seems even more likely to bring dramatic change. For more information about the H Street corridor, please visit hstreet.org or dcstreetcar.com. Coming up next, the 11th Street Bridge Park project. Stay tuned.
We taught him how to hit a baseball, how to hit a receiver, the strike zone, the net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
Welcome back to Student Exposure. The development of the 11th Street Bridge Park project is transforming the community and businesses on both sides of the Anacostia River. The Bridge Park is a new venture for healthy recreation, environmental education, and the arts. Let's take a look.
The 11th Street Bridge Park is a partnership between the East of the River-based nonprofit Building Bridges Across the River at the Arc, who's working with the city to transform an old freeway bridge into a park, physically over the Anacostia River. My name is Scott Kratz, and I've been the director of the 11th Street Bridge Park for the last 4 years. The 11th Street Bridge Park began at the Washington, D.C. Office of Planning, who saw this unique opportunity when these old freeway bridges had aged out, they came to the end of their lifespan, to explore, instead of getting rid of all the old infrastructure, could we explore transforming it into a new park, a new civic space, linking both sides of the river? I became involved about 4 years ago, where we went out and started talking to the community and engaging the community. And to date, we've had a little more than 600 meetings, making sure that the community has shaped every single element of this park. Every single programming element of the 11th Street Bridge Park has been shaped by the community. So in those early years, when we went out and asked the community, is this a project that they supported, we also asked what kind of programming should we put on this? How can the Bridge Park itself meet the needs of the local community? And they requested several things. They requested an environmental education center, performance space, the intergenerational play space, public art that tells the rich history of the region, an environmental education center, and urban agriculture to improve public health.
The new bridge can create opportunities for youth to actually fulfill their dreams in art or actually make better themselves so they can do the same like I do. My name is Deion Johnson. I'm 14 years old and I live in Ward 8. I've been a student at Artreach for about a year and a half now. What made me participate is my skills. I actually can draw. I feel like I want to contribute to the mural. What I've learned from being in this project is teamwork and dedication. My artwork makes me feel honored because like I made it. I actually did it. Like others can actually see what I did and all the stuff that I talk about and all the important things that was going on in DC. It makes me feel famous.
A key goal of the 11th Street Bridge Park is to serve as an anchor for equitable and inclusive development. So we've spent the last year and a half working very closely with the community to come up with what we call an equitable development plan. So these are clear recommendations, clear action items in 3 separate categories: housing, workforce development, and small business enterprises. Some examples of that are partnering with nonprofit organizations such as MANA to lead a home buyers club, to transition existing renters into home buyers. We'll be working with the Ward 8 Workforce Development Council on job training opportunities and encouraging small businesses along the MLK Good Hope Road, the historic Anacostia business corridor, to encourage individuals who currently live there to start their own small businesses. This is so much more than just a park, where it's important that we think about how this will impact the immediate neighborhood. There are many ways that people can get involved in the project. First, we have a wonderful series of programming coming up to engage the local community. We have our 2nd annual Anacostia River Festival, a big free event, and we encourage people to come down to the site. 2, we encourage people to go to our website at bridgepark.org and discover more about the project, but also sign up for our email newsletter so that they can keep up to date with the project. And 3, they can sign up and volunteer.
Awesome package, and here with me more to talk more about what you just saw is the segment producer, Miss Ebony Wheeler. Ebony, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So, why is this particular park or this project kind of interest to you?
Well, I grew up in Ward 8.
Okay.
I went to school there, I lived there, and honestly, there was nothing to do. I visited the Frederick Douglass home on a regular basis and the Big Chair as my playground. The neighborhoods, the playgrounds, the businesses were plagued with violence and drugs. So I was very, very, very happy when I found out that they were going to be transforming the old bridge into a park for residences that was going to kind of go from Anacostia into the Navy Yard and Capitol Hill neighborhoods.
So tell us a little bit about what the park has to offer for the youth in the area.
So they're going to have a performance space and an amphitheater. You're going to basically get to watch movies off of a bridge. They're going to do some river preservation classes for youth. They're going to have continuous opportunities for them to display their artwork and do some festivals and things like that.
You touched on the artwork. The #1 thing that I loved about your package was the young man who was featured there, the youth artist. Remind me what his name was.
His name was Dayon Johnson.
So Dayon's his face lit up when he was able to talk about his artwork and how it was so inspiring and how that made him feel famous. Where's the actual mural going to go? Do you know where that's going to go in our actual park?
Yeah, so the park is going to be featured on one of the pillars. It's going to be installed there, and it's not going to leave. So right now it's on display in different museums, and its final resting place is going to be the Bridge Park. So his artwork is going to be there. That's why he said it's going to make him feel famous.
He is going to be famous.
Yeah, it's going to be there until the bridge is no longer there.
Do you know how many students worked on the mural?
There were several students and volunteers. I'm not really sure about the number of students, but
okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, amazing piece. I am certainly excited about the park opening up. Do you know when they have an official date where they might do a ribbon cutting?
I'm not exactly sure when they're going to do the ribbon cutting, but it should be within a few years.
Okay, absolutely.
They start to break ground this year.
Breaking ground. Okay, sounds great. Well, thank you again for joining me, Ebony. The rapid influx of office spaces and condominium communities being built are like a wave of industrialization sweeping the city. The Bridge Park will create a balance in a community that would otherwise be consumed by those changes. We're all looking forward to this new positive, family-friendly addition to the D.C. area. For more information on the 11th Street Bridge Park project, visit their website, bridgepark.org, or call 202-889-5901.
I've always been curious about TV and visual media, but I thought it was totally out of my reach. Then I found DCTV. When I became a member, I discovered they had tons of resources to teach a guy like me all about media production. They offer hands-on training and access to their studios and equipment, and just like that, I was able to produce and air my own show. Yeah, my own show. I've become part of a community of people who are learning, sharing, and creating. How cool is that? I got in the network, and you can too, at DCTV.
This concludes another episode of Student Exposure, a student production of DCTV. I'm your host, Trinice Bishop. Thanks so much for joining us again for today's episode, Development in DC. We hope these stories were informative, inspiring, and helpful to you. For more information on programming or training opportunities at DCTV, visit our website, dctv.org. Also, follow us on Twitter and Facebook to stay connected with DCTV events and projects. We'll see you next time.